Hi guys, in this video we're going to explore a closure library called Hiccup. Hiccup is a library that allows us to deal with complex HTML um, using closure data structures rather than tacking together strings, which is going to be something we need to do as our pages get more and more complex, and the HTML we deal with is going to be harder and harder to deal with just using strings. So I'll start from scratch here. I'll start VI. By the way, that VI, that alias that I have, I've aliased that to nvim. So you might have to run nvim instead of VI from your command line. Um, Clean slate here. We'll open up our code, space FT. Sorry, just let me get Keycaster running so I can show you the keystrokes that I'm typing. No, that's not going to work for me today. Okay, I'll just have to describe them to you. We'll load up our code. Okay, we'll start a terminal. So just m:\n REPL for this to start. Okay, I hit escape, :e pound to get back to my previous buffer. Okay, let's :eb this. It didn't like that, :eb again. There we go. Okay. And let's go to our web server and make sure it's running. Oh, this is an experiment that I made. Okay. Oh, I know what's going on. We forgot to start it. :er starts our server. Back here, command R to reload. There we go. Okay. Things are running again. Okay. So the way I'm going to start with this is this hello world here. I'm going to take this world bit and I'm going to make this a value that we're getting from the outside world. For now, I'll just simulate this by putting it into a let block. So, I let name be world. Over here equals reformats for us. And then down in the body here, I want to actually put in the name here. So instead of doing this, what I'll do is I'll do :w to wrap this string in a set of parens, and I'll use str. Str just concatenates a bunch of strings together. So here I will say quote name quote, delete some of those things. Okay, so this str, if we give it a name, should give basically the same thing as we had before, but world over here. In fact, I'm going to change this to Bobo, just so we know that we're actually doing the new code. So I'll write that, I'll :er to reevaluate our handler. And I will go back to our web server, command R. Oh, what the heck, it's still world, but there's a reason for that. The reason is when we gave our handler to the web server, we gave a pointer to the function to the web server, but the problem is we changed our function and the web server was unaware of it. So I won't explain exactly how this works, but there's a way to fix this. I just had to do this. Put a pound quote before handler. Okay. So I'll :er the start function, and then I will :er here to restart our server. And then now we go here, we get Bobo. And if I go back to here and I say :er to reevaluate our handler, go back here, :r. So now Now we can change our handler and we don't have to restart our web server every time. So this is going to be handy for us. Okay, so now we can see the name that comes into the hello world thing. Now, here's a problem. I'm going to show you something that you have to be aware of when you build web apps called a script injection attack. Okay, so what this is if I do something like this, if say this name, this string here, came from a user that typed it into a web interface or something, we have to be careful that whether we're dealing with attackers, not when we're really doing our portal so much because that's for personal use, but this is really important if we have a public facing web server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume a malicious person is using my web app, and instead of putting in their name when we ask them, they put in this. Okay, comma ER, go back to our web server, control R. Oh dear. What's happened is that guy that typed just by typing a special thing into his name has now gained the ability to run any JavaScript that he wants inside of our application. This is really bad because he could steal information and all kinds of bad stuff from inside our app. We don't want to be able to do that. So so this is a good test that it shows that. I mean, in this case, he wasn't malicious. He just put up an alert. But this is a good test to say we really shouldn't have got this dialog here. So how do we handle that? How do we fix that? Well, it turns out the best way to fix that is to, instead of using strings to build our HTML, we should use a library that builds strings from a data structure. And that might sound mysterious, but let me quickly explain how that works. So if we go over to our web server, Command T, I'm going to search for a library called Hiccup. Okay, and the first hit is this guy here. Now it's a little disappointing that this library had its last release, I don't know, several years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And the release that they tell you to use on their website, 105, actually has the same SQL inject or script injection attack that regular string manipulation does. So what we want to do is we want to look at an alpha version, this 200-alpha 2. That's the one we want to use. So all I have to do is I got to go back here. This is going to be a bit of work, but so I'll write this, space FT. I'll go to my deps Eden. I want to add another dependency called Hiccup / Hiccup MVN version 2.0.0-alpha 2. Now, whenever I change my deps, I got to restart my whole REPL. So I'll go back to my terminal. I to insert, Control C to kill my REPL, and then up arrow, enter to restart it. And we should see it download Hiccup here, assuming I haven't already downloaded Hiccup. There it goes. This is a good reason why we try to keep the REPL running. So, because if we had to restart a REPL all the time, it would be a very unpleasant experience. Okay, escape, :E pound to get back to our deps. Okay, good stuff. That's loaded now. Now I can go back to my source code. Now, when we want to deal with something new, we need a new thing in our require block here. So I'm just going to say hiccup dot core refer HTML. Okay, and again, just to remind you, the require syntax, this is a namespace HTML is a function inside that namespace. If I do comma ER, it's interesting. It doesn't connect right away. There we go. Okay. Now, what we can do is, and I encourage this kind of approach as you, oh, let me clean some of this stuff up. I'm sorry, I've got some experimental code here that I put in. Okay, let's do this. Let's do a little experiment in here. Again, our experiments should be behind a pound underscore so that they're not always evaluated, only when we want them to be. And we'll say HTML, and we will say something like this. Okay, so comma ER. Okay, let's have a look at what this did now. We gave it a vector, right? The vector had a keyword called div, and it had a string in it called hello. We passed that to this HTML function. This HTML function returned a string, but it's a string of HTML. It did this start and end tag for us nicely, okay? Which is pretty cool. Now, the cooler part is I can nest stuff. So what I could do here is I could say div hello, and I could say B, and I can move my, okay. So div is a vector, and inside the vector, oh, I got this wrong, don't I? Okay. Inside the vector, I've got a keyword. That's my tag name, my HTML tag name. Here I've got a string. And then here I've got another vector with another keyword in it. So this is another tag that's going to go inside this div tag. So you can see how just using nested vectors, we can create a hierarchy of HTML. So so now if I do comma ER, see what this does now? I've got my div tag surrounds the whole thing. I got hello, and I've got my bold tags in here, and therefore I got a hello world HTML. So this is nice because I can now deal with vectors, which Clojure gives me a lot of good tools to deal with data structures like this, and I can kind of build my HTML and then just have one call to the HTML function to actually generate the HTML I'm going to send back up to the server. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to create another video to incorporate the Hiccup into our handler here.